everybody. We call to order the City of Franklin Municipal Planning Commission meeting for May the 26th, 2011. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started with the minutes for our April meeting. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, folks in the audience, this is your opportunity. If you have an item that is not on the agenda tonight and you want to speak to the commission, please feel free to come forward and we'll hear what you got to say. Okay, we have none. Then we'll move on to our announcements.
Yes.
Catherine?
Mr. Chairman, we continue to work on consolidating the concept and regulating plan into one plan called the development plan that will skip a step. Basically, it is good for the Board of Aldermen because they will see additional material on one plan, as will the Plan Commission at one time. And it will also assist the developers in consolidating their time frame. So we think it's a win-win for everybody involved. We hope to have that to you at work session or workshop in June.
Okay, thank you.
And that will be a very different way than the way we're doing reviews currently.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. At this point on our agenda, we have items. If you have an item that is not on our agenda tonight and you would like for us to consider that, please let us know. If not, then we will move on. All right, we're going to talk about the consent agenda. We'll start with the secondary consent. Those items are items 19, 20, and 25, and I'll be recusing myself and let Roger deliberate on those.
Mr. Chairman, the secondary consent agenda for tonight, items 19, 20, and 25, these are items that will be approved by the Planning Commission on one vote. Do I have a motion for acceptance of these items?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Roger. Now we'll move on to the main consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience, staff, or commission that want to withdraw anything from the consent agenda? Okay, I see none. Then we will maintain the consent agenda as items 7 through 18, 21, and 23. Now, Catherine, we did have one that wanted to defer. Was that right?
That is item number 23, and that is a deferral until next month. They're still working out some sewer issues.
Okay, so just to clarify, item 23 is consent to defer until next month.
And that is at the request of the applicant.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Somebody seconded it? Was it me hearing myself? All right. Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right. That moves us down to item 22. Ordinance 2011-20 to be entitled an ordinance to rezone 5.25 acres from residential variety RX to general office GO for property located at 222 Mallory Station Road.
Mr. Chairman, in 2008, this property was zoned light industrial. When we did the 2008 comprehensive rezoning, it was then zoned RX. The applicant has come in and requested that we rezone it to GO to allow for additional value in the property. They were unaware, or they indicate that they were unaware that the property had been rezoned. I know many of you have probably spoken to them, and we at staff have looked at their request for GO and support it. It is supported by the land use plan, and it will make a nice transition from the LI to the RX districts that are in that area. So staff is asking that you support this rezoning.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone in the audience want to speak to this particular item? All right. Is there anyone representing the applicant that wants to speak tonight? All right. Seeing none, then is there a motion?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
Yes, sir.
I need to make a declaration. One of the owners is on the board of directors for the J.L. Clay Senior Citizen Center. of which I am the director. Tom Lawrence is on the board, so I want to make that known.
Okay. All right, we do have a proper motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We move to item 24, Village of Eddy Lane subdivision preliminary plat, 4 lots on 7.2 acres, located at 412 Eddy Lane.
Mr. Chairman, a preliminary plat for this site was disapproved by Planning Commission at last month's meeting on the grounds that Planning Commission did not have enough information on cut and fill to determine if the project might affect neighboring properties. The applicant has since provided additional information regarding the location and volume of the cut and fill material with this new preliminary plat, and staff recommends approval with conditions.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience other than the applicant want to speak to this item? Okay, if you could come forward, state your name and where you live, please. And if you can hold your comments to 2 minutes,
I will.
I appreciate it.
I have a handout. Can I pass
Please,
this up?
please.
These are some photos taken on an iPhone of last year's flood on Eddy Lane. My name is Jackie Wiggishoff. I live at 426 Eddy Lane. My field adjoins the property in question. You know, as you know, last year on Eddy Lane, we had quite a flood. In fact, Eddy Lane was closed for 3 days. Most of us on the west side of the road incurred some type of property damage during that time, and one of our neighbors actually had to be rescued by the fire department because the water came up so fast. So I am somewhat surprised after the type of flooding we had on Eddy Lane last year and the flooding that occurred all over the city that we're contemplating building in a flood zone. And I understand that we're altering the flood zone, the floodplain, but it still seems foolhardy to me to be doing this after we've had one of the worst floods in history. I often wonder what would have happened had the water not receded 30 or 40 feet Sunday morning. If it had continued to rain, what would have happened? I think we would have blown every floodplain line they've ever drawn, because I know personally on my property, the water was to my back door. Sunday morning, it dropped down 30 to 40 feet. By Sunday evening, with the rains again, it was right up at the back door. So my point is, had it not dropped, had it continued to rain that night, I don't know what would have happened on Eddy Lane. Me and my husband have had federal flood on our home for years. It was a requirement of our mortgage, and even though now we have no lender, we still carry federal flood. I'm glad we did, because we lost $11,000 in high-efficiency air conditioning and heating equipment. A few years ago, a surveyor told us that we were no longer in the floodplain. If I had listened to him, I'd be out 11 grand. So my point being, when you're shooting numbers at various spots, they're not always correct. I understand Mr. Meltz, and I understand the borrow and fill, and I understand them putting the soil up at the front of the road, and I understand them digging out in the back. But I understand that his catch basin is going to be a lot bigger. But I don't know that I necessarily think it follows that he's improving the situation for all of us. I don't know. Perhaps he's even harming us. And that's what I'm saying. And I think that before we contemplate building in a residential area that's in a floodplain, I think further study needs to be done to make certain that none of the other neighbors will be harmed by this.
Can you wrap up your comments, please?
Yes. And lastly, I think John Barry wrote a book called The Rising Tide. And in it, he said, nature is perfect, humans are not. And if humans make a mistake against nature, nature will find and exploit it. And that's my concern. My husband would also like to make a few comments, and I have some additional pictures.
And would you tell me your last name again, please?
Wiggishoff.
Good evening. I'm Nick Wiggishoff, obviously husband of Jackie. We're actually the 9th and 11th owners of this property, and our field abuts next to the applicant. The other concern we have is concerning a large swath of rubble that's probably about, as you can see in the pictures, about now 10 feet high and about 75 feet wide, roughly. So this rubble has been here since January. Part of it now is actually in the floodplain. And it came from a factory called the last resident of the factory was Plastec, so it was literally that, it was plastics. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I do know that plastic is derived from oil and a lot of chemicals with E&E after it. And as you probably know from the Egyptian plant, also down the creek, has also a lot of those kind of chemicals. But anyway, so we have a concern from an environmental pollution standpoint. That's one concern. Another reason is the subsidence issue, which sort of affects us in a secondary way, but nonetheless does affect. I mow my field pretty regularly, and I don't know what owner, but some owner before us also put a lot of rubble down in the field, and we're constantly moving our debris into holes that have developed in our field from holes derived from the rubble put there. So I hope you're taking care of us. That's all. That's all we're going to be up to today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? You can take his last 20 seconds if you want.
Hi, I'm Samantha Fisher. I live at 409 Eddie Lane, which is directly across the street from the property. This spot right here where you can see that every time it does rain, all the water that goes through my yard goes straight across. The last time I came was less than a week after my father had died, and I do want to say a quote from my father. If your neighbor's property, what they do on their property, if they're not damaging your property or any of your other neighbor's property, you should let the person do what they want to on their own land. I have talked to the engineers, both with the city and with the gentleman who's building it. I feel like that what they are proposing will not do damage to my property or to the neighbors. And they are going to have to get the approval of FEMA before they can do anything. And right now, FEMA's had enough negative publicity. I don't think they're going to approve anything where they'll get additional negative publicity on dealing with flood situations. So I say, please let the man do what he wants to do at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Clem Fisher, 409 Eddie Lane. I've lived here all my life, and I've been coming to the meetings and talked to the various people involved in the project, and I feel that what he has proposed to do regarding the water, the flood issue, will actually improve it and make the area less prone to flood and everything. And I have confidence that he will do whatever it takes to make this project a success, because he has a reputation and in this line of work, and is very diligent regarding all the areas of the project and what needs to be done to draw it to a conclusion and enhance our neighborhood, and that's the reason I'm in favor of the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, seeing none, then is there someone representing the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Tom White. I'm an attorney with Toon Entricken & White, and I represent the applicant in this matter. My comment at the front end is I realize this matter had been basically disapproved because there wasn't information in sufficient form to be submitted. And I have reviewed that information. I think your staff has very thoroughly looked at it, and they've clearly concluded that the information is now in that unequivocally they would recommend approval. But I do want to make this comment. My appeal to your logic on this matter is that I feel it's relatively clear. The capacity for volume out here has clearly increased. Nobody can say that it's anything but improved by the time they do this project. It is an increase over the capacity there now. The second is, I think the engineers will also agree that it improves the flow characteristics on the property. Both these things, I think, are non-disputed. And I do want to comment that I feel like, even though this has been here 3 times, and this commission has been very, very diligent and given the most conscientious time, my clients have been talking a great deal with the neighbors and the city staff, and I make that for this reason. A lot of times, meeting with neighbors is non-productive. Everybody goes away with the same feelings they came in. But in this case, I think you heard from the last 2 people that spoke who were initially very significantly opposed here. They've met, they've thought through. They're very much aware that there's a greater capacity here at the end of the development, not to say all the cosmetics improvement of this development, but they understand that there's greater capacity on the property for water at the end than there is at the beginning. Again, I don't think there's a dispute about that or about the flow characteristics. With respect to the city's action tonight, your stormwater regulations are very clear. It says cut and fill will be permitted in the floodplain and waterway buffer. It talks about the compensatory cut. We've got that. We've met that. And the city has a long history of recognizing this type of ordinance, whether it was Fieldstone Farms many years ago, the Ladd property, the new Nissan development. It's not mandatory. There's some discretion here with this commission, but the client has more than met the requirements. I'd also mention that I think it's clear the streetscape of our development will be of significant benefit to the neighbors as well as the community. I want to comment, I've heard it that sometimes these type of developments are an experiment. This is not an experiment. If there's an engineer in this group who's looked at this, I'm asking them to make their comments tonight and to move approval because it is not an experiment. It increases the volume for capacity. The last thing that I would mention to you is that the engineers here, Gerald Busey, has been here throughout, will answer any questions. We've appreciated your indulgence, but would respectfully ask that it be approved tonight. We understand there are conditions, and we'll adhere to every one of the conditions. I've read through those, including the material that's on the site. These would be treated or taken to a C&D land, but whatever it is, we'll adhere to those things. This is preliminary plat approval. We've got to come back here for final, but we're assuring the commission will adhere to all the conditions. Would appreciate your approval and consideration. Thank you for your courtesies.
All right, thank you. All right, is there a motion on the floor?
Can I ask a question? Mr. White, I didn't quite understand that last thing you said.
I said whatever the, what I said, Ms. Peterson, was I've reviewed the staff's comments and conditions, and whatever those conditions are, we're going to adhere to. Not only are we legally obligated to, but we're saying we intend to fully adhere.
So you're still talking about what this is because
Everything.
There'll be some other things that we need to talk about
Only what I've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wasn't sure I understood.
All right, is there a motion?
I move for approval with staff recommendations.
Okay, moved and seconded. Clyde?
I need to disclose that I met yesterday with the applicants and with at least 5 of the residents out there and staff on site and looked at the site and discussed issues or listened to issues being discussed on site. So I want to make that disclosure before we make the vote.
Okay.
And I also was at that same meeting of the city staff, the developer, and some of the neighbors.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Peterson?
One thing that has not been brought up except in engineering, it states this site is the location of an illegal dump of construction waste, and I would like to hear some comments from the staff about that.
Okay, staff, could you all address that, please?
The construction debris which came from the Plastex manufacturing site, which was demolished over a period of several months, most of the debris was supposed to be removed to a landfill site in Rutherford County. Some of that, through their manifest, they could not prove all of it went to that location, and it wound up on this site. And since they cannot prove that the material that was dumped on that site was not contaminated in any manner, it shall be removed.
And that's a
And our
condition.
department, the Building and Neighborhood Services Department will undertake that to make sure it's done in an orderly manner and a timely manner.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, the other
Peterson.
comment is that some of it is now in the floodplain.
That's correct. A small amount has fallen off the hillside and into the floodplain, and that shall, once we remove that, that should take care of that problem also.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well,
Clyde?
I think that we've heard, but I'd still like to have assurance from staff that all issues have been addressed and that everything that we've asked it to be covered as far as floodplain issues, as far as cut and fill and all of those have been addressed, and that everyone on board is satisfied that those issues are resolved.
I've studied the borrow and the fill numbers, and there's no problem at all, basically. They can actually take out 1.4 times the amount that they need to do the fill from the cut area.
They have the capacity to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion?
Also I do need a refresher from the last meeting. We were saying that FEMA has to approve, has to approve cut and fill, everything that goes on this site as far as cut and fill, right? And we have means to monitor that. That will come back to the city so that we know that has happened. Yes, thanks.
All right. Any others? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the project, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Peterson votes no. Motion passes. All right, we move to item 26. Ordinance 2011-23 to be entitled an ordinance to amend Chapter 5, Section 5.3.5 of the City of Franklin zoning ordinance to revise standards relative to residential garages.
Mr. Chairman, we've been discussing this issue for quite a while. We had direction from this Plan Commission to take a look at our current front-loaded garages and the requirement that they be 20 feet back from the front facade of the house. We have spent at least two times with the design professionals and have come up with a compromise of 10 feet back. 10 feet back we felt was a reasonable amount of back from the front of the house. We're also asking the 22 feet from the sidewalk. The 10 feet back will allow enough design variation in the roof line so that the garage is not the predominant feature. And the design professionals have been, for the most part, in support. I mean, certainly some would prefer less feet back and some would prefer more, but in general, the design professionals have indicated that they are in support of the 10 feet back with 22 feet from the sidewalk. That gives us the allowance for larger backyards, while at the same time making sure that the design of the roof lines are such that it doesn't appear that the garage is predominant and that it's more pedestrian friendly. So staff would ask that you support this zoning text amendment.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, then is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 27, ordinance 2011-14 to be entitled ordinance to amend Chapter 5, Section 5.11.4 of the City of Franklin zoning ordinance, which establishes the exterior lighting standards.
Staff recommends approval.
What kind of explanation is that? What are we approving? All right. On that note, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak longer than Micah did? Please, anybody? All right, seeing none, then is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion? Ms.
Okay,
Peterson?
one of the things I noticed was to allow the taller lighting there, and I know we kind of talked about this, but pro and con at some point in time. So what's the reason to make this suggestion now?
There are multiple reasons. One, we have had several modification of standards requests come in, and they have all been approved to increase to 30 feet, 30-foot poles. Also, since we have switch from what was 30-foot poles down to the 20-foot, we have revisions to parking lots and buildings come in, and they are required to put the 20-foot maximum height pole in. And so we're seeing inconsistencies in parking lots. And since there have been several modifications of standards approved, we just thought that it may be better to go back to what the standard was before to be consistent when we see these revisions come in. And we haven't really seen any problems with the ones that have gotten modifications of standards.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.